In the mid-20th century, Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung proposed something radical. Beneath our individual minds lies a collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of symbols, patterns, and experiences that unite all humanity. He called these patterns archetypes: the hero, the shadow, the wise old man, universal templates that shape human behavior across cultures and centuries. Jung died in 1961, before the internet, before smartphones, before social media. But his insights into the human psyche may be more relevant now than ever, because social media has become the largest psychological experiment in human history, a space where billions of people simultaneously project their inner worlds onto glowing screens. Today, we're going to explore what Jung would say about our digital lives, about the personas we craft online, the shadows we project in comment sections, and the algorithms that map our collective unconscious in real time. To understand Jung's perspective on social media, we need to start with two fundamental concepts: the persona and the shadow. The persona is the mask we wear for social acceptance, the version of ourselves we present to the world. Not necessarily false, but carefully curated, emphasizing certain qualities while downplaying others. In Jung's view, developing a healthy persona is necessary. The problem comes when we become completely identified with this mask, losing touch with our authentic self. The shadow is everything the persona excludes: the repressed, denied, or hidden aspects of our personality. Our anger, our pettiness, our vulnerability, our inappropriate desires. The shadow doesn't disappear when we repress it. It manifests indirectly, often through projection onto others. Now consider social media. These platforms have become the largest projection screen in human history. Every day, billions of people carefully curate their online presence, selecting perfect photos, crafting ideal captions, presenting their best self. This is persona construction at an unprecedented scale. But here's what Jung would immediately notice. For every carefully curated post showing success, beauty, or happiness, there exists an equal and opposite shadow content that cannot be shared. The professional achievement without mentioning the anxiety, the vacation photo without the argument, the happy family portrait without the dysfunction. This creates a massive psychological imbalance. We're presenting ever more perfect personas while accumulating ever larger shadows. So where does the shadow go? Comment sections and trolling. The vitriol you see online often represents shadow projection. The person attacking someone for being fake may be struggling with their own authenticity. Online anonymity removes social constraints, allowing the shadow to express itself without consequences. Cancel culture. While sometimes addressing genuine harm, the psychological intensity often reflects shadow dynamics. We identify someone as completely bad, project all our own denied darkness onto them, and attack with righteous fury. Jung would say, the content that most enrages us online often reflects qualities we cannot accept in ourselves. Algorithmic amplification. Social media algorithms designed to maximize engagement preferentially amplify shadow content. Outrage, conflict, and controversy generate more clicks than nuance and compassion. Jung would warn that the more perfect your online persona becomes, the darker and more dangerous your shadow grows. The result? Digital neurosis. The exhaustion that comes from maintaining multiple unreal selves while the authentic self remains unexpressed. One of the most fascinating phenomena is the influencer, individuals who've built massive followings by sharing their lives online. Jung would have an illuminating perspective on this. Traditional shamans in indigenous cultures served as bridges between ordinary consciousness and the archetypal realm. They would enter altered states, commune with spirits and gods, and return with wisdom for their community. Influencers perform a psychologically similar function. They channel specific archetypal energies. The beauty influencer embodies the eternal feminine archetype, the goddess of love and aesthetic perfection. The fitness influencer represents the hero's journey of transformation through discipline. The entrepreneur influencer channels the trickster, magician who can manifest wealth and success. The activist influencer embodies the warrior fighting for justice. Followers don't just consume content, they psychologically participate in these archetypal dramas. They watch transformation videos and success stories, experiencing what Jung called vicarious individuation, living out unlived aspects of themselves through another person's journey. The problem arises when this process becomes stuck. The influencer's trap is what Jung would call archetypal possession. When someone becomes identified with an archetype, they lose their human flexibility. The beauty influencer can't age naturally or post without makeup. The success guru can't admit failure. They become prisoners of their own projections, forced to maintain an impossible standard 24/7. The follower's trap is projection without integration. Instead of developing beauty, discipline, or success within themselves, they consume it endlessly through their feeds. The archetypal energy gets stuck in projection rather than being integrated into their own personality. Social media creates archetypal consumption culture, endless exposure to archetypal patterns without any requirement for personal integration. You consume transformation without transforming, justice without becoming just, beauty without developing your own aesthetic sensibility. This might be Jung's most profound insight. Algorithms function as artificial manifestations of the collective unconscious. The collective unconscious is a shared psychological substrate, patterns of human experience that transcend individual minds. It's why similar myths emerge in cultures that never had contact, why certain symbols resonate universally. Now consider how social media algorithms work. They aggregate behavioral data from billions of users, clicks, pauses, shares, emotional reactions. They identify patterns in what captures human attention. They predict what will generate engagement based on deep psychological patterns. Then they amplify content that triggers these patterns most effectively. In essence, algorithms are mapping the collective unconscious in real time and using that map to manipulate individual behavior. This is why certain content goes viral. It triggers archetypal responses, transformation stories, the hero's journey, before, after weight loss, rags to riches success, idealized beauty, animus projections, impossibly perfect people living perfect lives, righteous anger, the shadow, stories of injustice that let us project our darkness onto clear villains. Memes are particularly fascinating. They're essentially digital archetypes, symbolic patterns that capture something fundamental about human experience and spread through the collective psyche like psychological viruses. But here's the problem. Algorithms map the collective unconscious, but lack wisdom about psychological integration. They optimize for engagement, not psychological health. One group becomes possessed by the righteous crusader archetype, the other by the persecuted victim archetype. Each projects its shadow onto the other. The algorithm amplifies this conflict because engagement drives profit. The algorithm becomes like a neurotic complex in the collective psyche, compulsively repeating patterns that generate short-term activation but long-term fragmentation. Individuation, Jung's term for becoming a psychologically whole person, requires integrating the various aspects of your personality into a coherent self. Social media creates both unprecedented opportunities and dangers for this process. The dangers: external validation addiction. True individuation requires developing internal authority, learning to trust your own judgment. But social media encourages outsourcing self-worth to collective opinion. When you need likes to feel valuable, comments to feel validated, you've made the collective your inner authority. Persona inflation. Success on social media can inflate the ego and disconnect you from your authentic self. You become identified with your online persona, mistaking it for your whole self. Shadow avoidance. Platforms reward presenting your best self and punishing vulnerability. This encourages shadow repression rather than integration. Fragmented attention. Individuation requires sustained self-reflection and inner work. The fragmented, reactive nature of social media makes this deep inner work nearly impossible. How can someone use social media in service of individuation? First, practice shadow integration. When you feel triggered by someone online, ask, what does this reveal about my own shadow? Strong emotional reactions often indicate shadow material. Second, cultivate internal authority. Before posting, check, am I sharing this because it's authentic to me or because I'm seeking validation? Gradually build the habit of validating yourself. Third, maintain embodied reality. Jung believed psychological work happens through actual lived experience, not mental consumption. No amount of scrolling substitutes for real relationships, genuine challenges, or creative work. Use social media as a supplement to embodied life, not a replacement. Fourth, practice regular digital fasts. Periodically disconnect to reconnect with your inner world. This space is where genuine individuation happens. Jung's ultimate message wasn't despair about human psychology, it was hope through consciousness. He believed that becoming aware of unconscious patterns gives you choice about them. Recognize projection when it's happening. Every time you have a strong emotional reaction to online content, pause and ask, what is this showing me about my own psyche? Use these reactions as mirrors for self-knowledge. Build internal validation capacity. Practice validating yourself before seeking external validation. Gradually shift from external to internal authority. Remember your mortality. Jung emphasized that awareness of death is essential for living authentically. Social media encourages us to act as if we have infinite time to accumulate followers and likes. Remembering your mortality helps you ask, is this how I want to spend my limited time? Jung would say that social media represents the externalization of the psyche's inner dynamics. Projection, shadow, persona, archetypal energies, all played out on a massive, visible scale. He would recognize it as simultaneously the greatest threat to and opportunity for human psychological development in modern history. Threat because it exploits our vulnerabilities and fragments our consciousness. Opportunity because it makes psychological dynamics visible in unprecedented ways. He would emphasize that the problem isn't technology itself, it's unconscious engagement with technology. Used unconsciously, social media fragments and addicts. Used consciously, it can be a tool for self-understanding. Every online interaction is also an inner interaction. The people you encounter represent aspects of your own psyche. The content that triggers you reveals your shadow. Your social media behavior is a map of your psychological patterns. The most radical act in the digital age isn't to accumulate followers or go viral. The most radical act is to know yourself, to use these platforms as tools for genuine self-understanding rather than elaborate mechanisms for self-deception. Jung believed that consciousness is the goal of human development. Social media is our current challenge. The question is whether we'll remain unconscious, trapped in patterns we don't understand, or whether we'll use this unprecedented experiment to develop deeper psychological awareness. In the digital age, as in every age, Jung's wisdom remains. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are.